It started with silence, the kind of silence that presses against your chest, that makes the air heavier than it should be. We weren't alone, but it felt like we were. Her eyes held mine longer than they needed to, like she was testing if I'd look away first. I didn't. I couldn't. She was in her mid-40s, though if anyone asked, I would have sworn time bent around her. The kind of woman who carried herself as if she knew exactly how the world saw her, confident, elegant, but with something softer hiding just underneath. A flicker of hesitation in the way she smoothed her sleeve, the way her laugh sometimes trailed off before it should. I was 20-something. Younger, less polished, but too aware of every detail about her, the tilt of her chin, the faint perfume of sandalwood and citrus, the warmth radiating when she leaned a little too close. I never said much when she was near, but my silence was never empty. She filled it. Her hand brushed mine as she reached for the glass between us. Just a passing touch, something so small it could have been nothing. But it wasn't nothing. My skin carried it, burned with it. She didn't pull away right away either. A fraction of a second too long. Just enough to notice. The room was dim, lit by the kind of low light that makes everything slower, softer. Her voice carried low, almost playful, almost testing. "You always know what to say," she murmured. But I didn't. I didn't say a word. My throat tightened, and maybe she saw that, because the corner of her lips curved, not into a smile exactly, more like something unguarded, something she hadn't meant to show. I watched her tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, a small, nervous habit that didn't fit the woman everyone else thought she was. That contradiction drew me closer than anything she could have said out loud. She was supposed to be composed, untouchable. Yet here she was, brushing her hair back like a girl caught in a thought she shouldn't have. Her wineglass trembled just enough to catch the light. She laughed too softly, shaking her head. And here I am, talking too much again. I wanted to tell her she wasn't. That she could keep talking until the night ended, and I'd still want more. But instead I stayed quiet, watching her trace the rim of the glass with her fingertip. The silence stretched again, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It was alive. It buzzed between us, electric, like we both knew words would only break what had settled there. Her knee brushed mine under the table. Once. Then again, slower, deliberate. My breath caught, but I didn't move. "See?" she said, eyes flicking back to mine. "You don't even need to answer. You just stay. And somehow that's enough." The way she said it, barely above a whisper, like it wasn't meant for me to hear, left me suspended between the urge to speak and the need to keep still. And then, the door creaked open. A draft of cooler air slipped in, breaking the warmth that had wrapped around us. She stiffened, pulling her hand back, straightening her posture as if nothing had happened. But her eyes lingered on me, just a second too long, before she turned toward the sound. I didn't move. My chest still held her words. She said, "You always know what to say." And I still hadn't said a word. She poured another half glass of wine, though her hand hovered as if debating whether she should. I watched the dark red swirl, the stem of the glass delicate between her fingers. She didn't look at me when she spoke. "You're too young to be sitting here with me." It wasn't an insult. It was softer, almost tired, like she'd said it to herself before. I leaned back, pretending her words didn't land where they did. "You don't sound convinced." That made her laugh, short and quiet, the kind of laugh that comes out when someone doesn't want to admit you're right. She finally looked at me then. "I've lived a whole life already, you know. Marriage, divorce, a son who barely calls anymore. What could you possibly see in—" She stopped herself, pressing her lips together. I didn't answer. Maybe I didn't need to. I just watched her swirl the wine, the way her thumb rubbed against the glass, restless. She had always been the confident one. The one who carried conversations, who filled silences before they became too much. But tonight, I caught glimpses of something rawer, her shoulders tightening when she spoke of her son, her gaze flicking toward the door as though someone might walk in and catch us. Maybe that's why I couldn't stop noticing her. The world saw her as put together, unshakable. I saw the tremor in her hands, the faint line at her brow, the way she lingered too close and then pulled away as if her own body betrayed her. When she leaned forward, her hand brushed my shoulder. Just enough for the warmth to settle there, heavy, deliberate. She didn't move it right away. My pulse stuttered, and I kept my face still, afraid even a breath would break the moment. Her perfume, subtle, earthy with a trace of citrus, clung to the air between us. She lowered her voice, as if the walls might be listening. People would talk, you know. If they saw us like this. I let the silence stretch before I spoke. Then it's good no one's watching. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Instead, she exhaled, a slow breath that brushed against my skin, far too close. My chest tightened. I shouldn't be here, she whispered. But her hand was still on me. I turned slightly, enough for my knee to catch hers again under the table. This time I didn't wait. I pressed back, just barely. She didn't move. For a long moment, neither of us did. The hum of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of the clock on the wall, everything filled the space where words should have been. Finally, she let her hand fall from my shoulder, but not before her thumb traced the faintest line against my shirt. A gesture so small it could be mistaken for nothing, except we both knew it wasn't. Her eyes met mine, steady now. Less guarded. More dangerous. And for the first time that night either of us reached for our glass. The night should have ended, but neither of us moved. The clock ticked too loud, the air too warm. She shifted, gathering her glass, and for a second her shoulder brushed mine again. It wasn't an accident this time. I turned toward her just as her phone lit up on the table. The vibration broke the spell. A name flashed across the screen, her sister. She froze, staring at it, then let it ring out. Don't you need to? I started. No. Her voice was sharper than she meant, and she softened it quickly. No. Not right now. The silence that followed was heavier than before. I could hear my own heartbeat, fast, unsteady. She reached for her phone as if to silence it completely, but her fingers trembled. I wanted to cover her hand with mine, to steady it. I didn't. Not yet. The door creaked suddenly in the hall. Both of us straightened instantly, guilty without reason. The footsteps slowed, then passed. A neighbor. Nothing more. But the way she exhaled told me the closeness was dangerous, more dangerous than either of us wanted to admit. She laughed lightly, but it didn't reach her eyes. See? This is exactly what I meant. I leaned in before I could stop myself. What you meant, or what you're afraid of. Her eyes darted to mine, sharp, then softened. She didn't answer. Instead, she shifted closer, her knee pressing fully against mine under the table now. She didn't move away. The air thickened. She tilted her head, hair falling slightly across her face, and I wanted to brush it back. My hand twitched against my leg. You shouldn't look at me like that, she whispered. How am I looking at you? Her lips curved barely. Like you're about to. She stopped, catching her own breath. I leaned forward, and for a suspended second, the world vanished. Her eyes closed halfway, her lips parted just enough. I could feel her warmth, the faint tremble of her breath brushing mine. Inches. Less than inches. Then her phone buzzed again, louder this time. She pulled back sharply, pressing the glass to her lips like she needed the distraction. Her voice was unsteady when she finally spoke. "This can't happen." But she was still close. Too close. I reached across the table, not for her hand, but for her glass. My fingers brushed hers when I took it, deliberately slow, deliberately lingering. She let me, didn't move away, just stared. "Then why aren't you moving?" I asked quietly. Her throat worked as she swallowed. She didn't answer. Instead, she set the glass down with a faint clink and leaned in again, so close that her hair grazed my cheek, so close I could feel the warmth of her shoulder pressed against mine. Neither of us kissed the other. Neither of us pulled away. And somehow, that was worse. The second buzz of her phone still echoed in the air, but she didn't reach for it this time. She sat there, stiff, glass forgotten, as if even the smallest movement might tip something over the edge. I couldn't take my eyes off her. The curve of her jaw in the dim light, the faint line between her brows, the way her chest rose and fell just a little too quickly. She whispered it then, almost to herself. "You make this too hard." "Too hard to what?" I asked, leaning in. Her gaze locked on mine, unflinching now. "Too hard to keep pretending." The words hit harder than I expected, and for a second, I couldn't breathe. I wanted to answer, to tell her she didn't have to pretend at all, but my throat closed up. Instead, I reached out. My hand hovered hesitant before I brushed a strand of hair back from her face. The silk of it slid through my fingers. She closed her eyes for just a heartbeat, and when they opened again, they burned. "You don't understand," she said, voice unsteady. "I've lived long enough to know what happens if anyone sees this. They'll talk. They'll laugh. You'll regret it." I shook my head, closer now than I should have been. "You think I care what they say?" Her lips parted, her breath warm against my cheek. I heard her inhale sharply, as if she were about to answer, but no sound came. Instead, she leaned forward, her forehead nearly touching mine. The closeness was unbearable. My hand slid lower, resting against her arm, feeling the faint tremor beneath her skin. "You shouldn't." She started, but her voice cracked. I lowered my head, just enough for my words to brush against her ear. "Then stop me." She didn't. Her hand lifted slowly, shaking, until her fingers traced the edge of my collar. Not a pull, not quite, but enough to undo every bit of restraint I had left. "You're too young," she whispered again, softer now, almost pleading. "And you're too beautiful," I breathed back. Her laugh broke, half a sob, half a release. She leaned into me then, her shoulder against my chest, her breath hot against my neck. My arms hovered, unsure if holding her would break everything or finally make it real. I felt her lips part near my jaw, felt the tremor in her hand against my chest. The world collapsed to that one moment, that one impossible choice. I tilted my head, so close I could taste the wine on her breath, the heat of her lips only a fraction away. She lifted her chin just enough, eyes closing, and then, the sound of a key in the lock. The metallic scrape cut through the silence like glass shattering. Her eyes flew open. She froze, inches from me, trembling, still caught in the space between what almost happened and what couldn't. Neither of us moved. The key turned once, twice, before stopping. Neither of us breathed. She gripped the edge of the table so tightly her knuckles paled, eyes wide, lips still parted from where they had almost touched mine. Then silence. Whoever it was didn't come in. Just the faint sound of retreating footsteps down the hall. She exhaled so hard it was almost a shudder. Her chair scraped slightly as she pushed back, putting inches, too many inches, between us. "We can't," she started, voice breaking, then steadied it. "We really can't." I leaned forward despite myself. "Then tell me you don't want this." She met my eyes, and for the first time, she didn't look away. Her throat tightened as she swallowed. Wanting is not the problem. The room pulsed with the admission. My chest felt too small for my breath, my hands restless on the table. She saw that, and it broke something in her composure. She stood, moving toward the kitchen under the pretense of pouring more wine, but I knew better. Her back was to me when she spoke again, softer. Do you even know what you're asking? I have been careful my entire life. Careful with my son, with my marriage, even with the divorce. Careful never to want too much. I rose slowly, each step toward her deliberate. And now? She turned, wine forgotten, glass empty in her hand. Her eyes glistened, and her fingers trembled as she set it down on the counter. Now I'm standing here with you, wishing someone hadn't heard what I just said. My breath caught. Heard? Her lips pressed tight before she confessed it. My sister. That call earlier. I didn't answer because she already suspects. She saw us last week. The way I looked at you. She knows. The air shifted instantly. What had been hidden was suddenly dragged into the open. My pulse spiked, not from fear, but from the realization that the world outside this room was closer than I thought. She stepped past me, brushing my arm as she moved toward the window. The touch lingered, unintentional but charged, her body heat trailing against mine. What did she say? I asked. She told me I was being reckless. That I was trying to prove something. Her voice cracked at the last word, like it wasn't her sister's judgment that stung, but her own reflection in it. I reached out then, my hand grazing her wrist before catching it fully. Her skin was warm, trembling beneath my touch. And what do you think? She froze, caught between pulling away and falling into me. Her eyes dropped to our joined hands, her breath uneven. Finally, she whispered, almost too low to hear. I think I stopped being careful the moment I let you in. The weight of it pressed into the space between us. She didn't move her hand. Neither did I. And in that charged stillness, there was no more pretending that this wouldn't end where we both knew it was heading. Her wrist still trembled in my hand. She didn't pull away. Neither did I. The air between us was thick, like the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for a decision. She lifted her gaze, and the flicker in her eyes wasn't hesitation anymore. It was surrender, terrified and certain all at once. You don't know what this will cost, she whispered, but her voice had lost its strength. Then let me pay it, I said. Her lips parted, the faintest sound escaping, and then she stepped closer. Just inches now. The warmth of her body reached me before her touch did, the faint brush of her shoulder against mine like a fuse sparking. My other hand rose, hesitating only once before cupping her cheek. Her skin was warm, softer than I had imagined in the countless moments I'd stopped myself before. She leaned into it, just barely, but enough to undo every reason I'd rehearsed for why this couldn't happen. I shouldn't, she murmured, though the words fell against my lips now, as if they belonged to another lifetime. You already did, I breathed back. Her hand lifted, trembling, and pressed against my chest. I felt her fingers curl in my shirt, not pushing me away but holding on. Her eyes closed, and in that suspended silence she tilted her face up. The kiss wasn't rushed. It was hesitant, aching, the kind that begins in restraint and breaks apart into need. The first brush of her lips against mine carried years of denial, of careful choices, of loneliness she hadn't admitted until tonight. When she pulled back, her forehead rested against mine. Both of us unsteady, both of us breathing too hard. This changes everything, she whispered, her voice trembling. Good, I said, my thumb tracing along her cheekbone. Her laugh was fragile, broken but real. You don't know what you're promising. I leaned in again, my lips grazing her ear, my words low, steady. Then let me prove it. Her hands slid up, finally wrapping around my shoulders. She held on like she was afraid I might vanish if she let go. No more hesitation, no more half-steps or stolen glances. The decision had already been made, and it was here, raw and undeniable between us. When she pulled back enough to look at me, her eyes were steady, stripped of all pretense. I thought I'd spend the rest of my life careful, she said. And now I don't want to be. I brushed my thumb over her lips, the echo of the kiss still there. Then don't. And in that moment, with nothing left to hide, we both understood the risk, the weight, the inevitability. It wasn't about pretending anymore. It wasn't about age, or judgment, or what anyone else might say. It was just us, finally, without restraint. The room was quiet again, but it wasn't the same silence that had weighed on us earlier. It was softer now, fuller, like the air carried something new we couldn't take back. She was still close, closer than she'd ever let herself be before. Her hand lingered on my chest, her fingers curled slightly in the fabric of my shirt. I covered her hand with mine, holding it there steady. For the first time all night, she didn't look away. I've been afraid of this, she admitted. Afraid of what people will say, afraid of making another mistake. Afraid of you regretting me. I shook my head, pressing my forehead to hers. You don't get it. I've never been so sure of anything. Her laugh was soft, shaky, almost disbelieving. She brushed a strand of hair back from my face, the way I had done for her earlier. You're too young to be this certain. Or maybe you've just forgotten what it feels like to want something without excuses, I said. That stilled her. Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she let out a breath she'd been holding for too long. Her body leaned into mine, not careful this time, not hesitant. Just hers against mine, finally without the walls between us. I wrapped my arms around her, slow and sure, pulling her against me until I felt her exhale fully against my shoulder. She fit there like she'd been waiting for it, like all her careful years hadn't prepared her for something this simple. We stayed like that, not rushing, not speaking. Just holding. Her heartbeat was steady against my chest, mine uneven but calming with every second she didn't let go. After a long while, she murmured into the quiet. Maybe we'll still be careful. But not tonight. I smiled against her hair. Not tonight. Her hand slipped into mine then, our fingers intertwining with a finality that made words unnecessary. There was nothing polished about it, nothing rehearsed, just the warmth of her skin pressed to mine, the kind of touch that carried a promise without having to say it out loud. She tilted her head, and I pressed a kiss to her forehead. She closed her eyes at that, relaxing fully for the first time since the night began. It wasn't a grand ending. No fireworks, no declarations. Just two people sitting too close, hands joined, breathing the same quiet air. And yet, it was everything. We had crossed the line. And neither of us wanted to go back. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?